You have to prove your innocence, not put up a story that's potentially believable.
It's quite simple. Just say, right, well, prove where your eggs come from. Show us a trail of where you was purchasing the eggs.
There is no stopping the fury. Look, I'm irate. I can go. Me boys can go. We're ready.
This is Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. In fact, it's episode 15. Don't forget to keep liking the videos, subscribing to the channel. But let's get on with this week's show. And we're going to get to Jake Paul and Tommy Fury and all that stuff in Saudi Arabia. But before I do, Spencer, you okay? Everything all right? You've just been to Saudi?
Yeah, everything's fine. Yeah, everything's great. I had a great time out in Saudi. But like you say, we'll get to that.
What I want to kick off with, Spencer, I think what we should kick off, and it's a story that keeps on going. And I know people have heard it numerous times, but it's coming to a point now where you can't not talk about it. Conor Benn and the events that unfolded last week with the WBC, a sanctioning body. Mm-hmm. I suppose the terminology is exonerating him.
Yep.
What was your view? I've got my views, but let's start with yours in terms of what was your takeaway, what's your thought process, where do you think this is going? What do you think of Conor Benn's recent assertions about suing the British Boxing Board of Control and so on and so forth?
Yeah. So the WBC have reinstated him into the WBC rankings. Conor still hasn't got a licence, obviously, because of the British Boxing Board of Control situation, which we all understand now. You know, we're waiting for him to see where he's going to go, Conor, what his next move is. But the WBC have put him back in to their rankings. So I interviewed Mauricio Suleiman out in Saudi.
I saw you.
Yeah.
He wanted to be pinned down, did he?
Pinned him down, asked him the questions, and he wasn't giving me the answers. I want to get into this situation with Conor Benn. The WBC have just recently reinstated him into their rankings. Can you explain a little bit about how that's happened?
Yeah, the clean boxing program protocol has finished, and we put out a press release, which is self-explanatory, and he will be reinstated next month on the rankings.
Sure. I mean, the British Boxing Board of Control, he doesn't hold a licence anywhere at the moment, Conor Benn. He relinquished his British Boxing Board of Control licence. So with him getting reinstated, just to clear all this up, he gets reinstated into the WBC rankings, but he will have to get a licence from somewhere in the world. I'm not sure he's going to go down the British Boxing Board route, so could that possibly be America or somewhere else?
I don't know. We do not license back boxers, and we simply said everything that happened in the ruling, so that's all that we have to say about the case.
Yeah, I mean, I know you received a 270-page document about, Conor's case and about what he was saying to prove his innocence. He did fail 2 tests at 2 different times, the UCAD test that he had failed. Could you clear up how, I don't know if you can go into this legally or not, but how this was cleared up? I mean,
I am not a scientist, and the ruling is very clear. That's the only thing that we have to say about the matter.
I mean, you was comfortable with what they presented in that document to say, well, yeah, it's okay to let him continue boxing, even though he had failed those 2 tests previously.
You're trying to put me into a corner, and
I'm not. I'm just trying to get the answer. That's all.
No, the answer
is still a little bit unclear at the moment as to why or how he was reinstating the WBC rulings without having this license.
We did a process under the protocol, and the ruling came from that process, and that's what we put out a couple of days ago.
I didn't get the answers that he wanted. What is my take on it? I think
they should butt out Spence.
I agree.
WBC.
I totally agree with it, Simon. I agree that, I think they've got themselves involved in this. Conor Benn has to prove his innocence, right? We've heard a lot about this. And look, I know especially me, been very vocal about this. And it's not a personal attack on Conor. No. It's this, and I must make that clear. It ain't a personal attack. Well, he's had a great relationship with Conor Benn, but it's this situation. And, the way that Conor Benn and his team have dealt with it, and they keep coming out saying, we've proved our innocence. A lot of people are going to have, excuse a pun, egg on their face. I say, well, listen, where's the innocence? We can't keep hearing it,
I think you were right.
And we haven't got it.
You said it the other day, and I think it was a very insightful observation. If people keep saying the thing enough times, they'll maybe convince people that what they're saying is true.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's very clear from our point of view, both you and I, more so you, because you're a former fighter, so you'll have more investment in the well-being of fighters and more ability to be able to relate and have empathy. Nobody that I'm aware of besides mean-spirited people, want Conor Benn to be in this position.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody wants anything but the best for Conor Benn. Nobody wants Conor Benn to be the victim of a witch hunt, and nobody wants him to be in a situation where his career is ruined by a set of circumstances. But that being said, what people do want is they do want some transparency about the circumstances, and they do want to understand the principles of what's being said, because we're getting a lot of people saying a lot of things. Don't look over here, look over there. Don't look over here, look over there. Right? Don't worry about that test, worry about this test. Don't worry about VADA because it was a voluntary test. Why would he take a test if it was voluntary? And all of this subterfuge forms a backstory. Then you get very smart lawyers in that, smarter than the lawyers that WBC have got, smarter than the UK lawyers because they cost more, and ultimately that's their game. They deal with doping challenges.
But the reason for the VADA testing and taking the voluntary testing for the VADA testing is to put him back in the WBC rankings. Without the VADA testing, he couldn't go into the WBC rankings.
But
so
people will say it's not voluntary.
Yeah.
It's not voluntary. It's a mandatory test if you want to be inside the top 15 rankings of the WBC. So when you look at this, and the key components, I spent a lot of time whilst I was away in Spain looking at this because A, I want Conor to be innocent. B, I want the British Boxing Board of Control to have some balls and some authority. And C, I want people accountable. And I don't know which order I want that to be in, but these are the three events that I want to have happened. Right? This is the reason why that we put Robert Smith in that chair and asked him questions and pushed him. And it's ridiculous when other people turn around and say that he wasn't asked questions because he clearly was. Right? And I still maintain that the British Boxing Board of Control needed to have more balls and set the pace of what happened rather than being deflected by maybe legal letters from Conor Benn's team. But here's my understanding of the situation and see if you walk through it and understand it to be the case. WBC is a sanctioning body. They have no jurisdiction in this situation whatsoever.
Doesn't matter if he's in the WBC rankings or not.
Irrelevant. It's window dressing. The obligation upon Conor Benn with the WBC is vastly different than it is with the British Boxing Board of Control. And the terminology used by the British Boxing Board of Control was very clear, strict liability. What that means is what you've got in your body, you have to account for. You have to prove your innocence, not put up a story that's potentially believable. You have to prove. It's like an athlete in America called Shelby Houlihan, who was a sprinter. She got caught with a substance in her body, and that substance got her, it was Nandrolan, and that got her a 4-year ban. She went after the ban. She investigated it. She found it to be some boar meat introduced into a burrito inside a particular environment, yet still, because she couldn't prove the chain after getting a private investigator in, she was still banned. Now, here's the thing with the WBC. The burden of proof was, you tell us a story that is plausible, and we'll look at it, and we'll give you, and if your guilt is not beyond reasonable doubt, then we're going to potentially clear you. So Conor, with a 270-page report, questions the integrity of VADA testing. Questions the sensitivity of machines in VADA labs, and produces a report that has nothing to do with diet. Right? At the same time as the idea of diet suddenly comes into Conor and his team's mind about potentially he may have eaten eggs. We don't know whether he's eaten eggs or not. He's telling us he does. But what he did tell us in an interview in November was his diet consisted of a variety of things and maybe the occasional omelette. So we didn't get to hear back in November or October, whenever it was, about this huge egg consumption that's now formulated part of his defence against the allegation. Now, I hope him to be right, but what the WBFC have said is, okay, we've had a nutritionist in the last 3 weeks, we've investigated. Okay, it's entirely plausible. But I'm not entirely sure that the WBC have then gone, right, where'd you get those eggs from? Because my understanding of it is that eggs with clomophone only ever come from America rather than UK eggs, right?
That's right.
So where'd you get these American eggs from? Who was the supplier? And follow the food chain to its natural conclusion so he can exonerate himself. My take on it is that he's put together, it may well be true, but he's put together a plausible story, plausible deniability, and the WBC said, okay, fine, it's not beyond reasonable doubt that you're guilty, so you're exonerated. Now, here comes the British Boxing Board of Control over the hill.
So,
strict liability.
So where we're at right now with the WBC, so he's presented a 270-page document saying this is what it is, and now it's the this high quantity of eggs in his dietary in his diet. So that's where we're at, and the WBC have not really investigated that, and they've said, well, that's maybe acceptable, so we'll put you back in the rankings.
They will say they have investigated it, and their argument is they put a nutritionist in.
And so the British Boxing Board of Control now really have to say, well, you've just panned it out beautifully there, Simon, where you say, right, well, you know, the clomiphene, is not in eggs in this country. It's in America. Let's do the trial. Let's see if the eggs that Conor was taking have come from America. You can do the trial.
That's fine.
So if the British Boxing Board of Control are more stringent on this and they're going to look into it, investigate it more, then that's the simple answer, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate equation is that the WBC have been utilised and I suspect used in this situation, knowing that and it's their gift, and they are able to enforce their version of events, given it's VADA testing that they put forward, and given that VADA is different from UKAD because it doesn't have any hearings there and afterwards and an investigation afterwards, just produces a test with an outcome, right? And with that in mind, the WBC, it's their gift to have their procedures.
Yep.
But the British Boxing Board of Control's procedures are slightly different. And the challenge for me is and you can speak to this, why does anyone believe there's an agenda? Because that's the allegation.
Yeah.
There's an agenda against Conor Benn, all the way back to his father tearing up his boxing board of license in the 90s whenever he did it, right?
Yeah.
Why would anyone believe that there would be an agenda against Conor Benn from Robert Smith and the British Boxing Board of, I'll give them the title control for this purpose of this conversation.
Well, why would there be an agenda? That's exactly
I'm asking you as a fighter.
Yeah, like I'm saying, there's no reason to believe that. I mean, there's no evidence for the British Boxing Board of Control to have any sort of agenda against Conor Benn with what happened with his father way back in the 90s. I mean, that's just not...
So we'll go back to the discussion we had with Robert Smith, not for the nature of keep repeating the same things, but if the circumstances, boxing can only throw out so many stories. This isn't the Premier League, we've got 20 teams playing 2 games a week, right? You've got only so many things you can talk about in boxing. So we'll make no apologies, but keep talking about Conor Benn because Conor Benn's situation came up last week. You look at it and again I make the observation, and I'm very keen for the British Boxing Board of Control to have some teeth. Not because I want them teeth to bite Conor Benn, but I want them to have some teeth about boxing full stop. Again, I make the observation, who runs this sport? The promoters, then the fighters, then the media, then the British Boxing Board of Control. Because you've now got a situation where there is a perception that Conor Benn is going to sue the British Boxing Board of Control for the loss of earnings that he will have had as a result of drug tests that have been failed and his refusal to go and attend to the British Boxing Board. I mean, Robert Smith told us, didn't he?
Yeah.
Let me finish this point.
Yeah, sure.
Told us, because I said to him, what in God's name took you so long? You got a test result from the 23rd of July, in the end of August. We got a letter straight away from Conor's legal team, pretty much cease and desist, right? So with that in mind, what grounds would anybody have if you're being told as the governing body, stop here, you can't go there, we are putting legal barriers up in front of you, which, by the way, I don't think is good enough. I think the Boxing Board of Control should have gone, do one. We're the Boxing Board of Control. You'll comply with our guidelines, not the other way around. Do you not think that there's something, I don't know if it's morally wrong, but structurally wrong, that the Boxing Board of Control gets told, back in your box. I am the box. How do I get put in a box? I'm the box. Back in your box.
I totally agree with that. You know, is this suing the Boxing Board of Control for £3.5 million? A position to say, well, the Boxing Board of Control haven't got £3.5 million, and perhaps that will then be them backing down or whatever. I mean,
they were short.
They were short. Listen, but it's quite short. It's quite simple. You know, Conor Benn suing the Boxing Board of Control for £3.5 million for loss of earnings. Yeah. But he's not proved his innocence. So, like, how do you sue them? And the Boxing Board of Control, that you just painted the trail that needs to be done. And it's quite simple. Just say, right, well, prove where your eggs come from. Show us a trail of where you was purchasing the eggs, how many eggs you were consuming at the time, because we've only just heard about this. That was, like you say, it wasn't in his dietary requirements before. So that's just popped up. And so it just don't all... It sounds wrong to me, Simon, you know? It all sounds wrong.
What I would say in all of this is that if you've got to hear about a result of a failed test, now the argument will be that UKAD tests were subsequently passed, VADA tests were failed. We know that when you're doing something, you can do things in a way that you can know the structure of when tests, and if you've got reduced doses in your second test, it might not necessarily be because the original tests have not been supplemented by an increased use of a particular PED. It's actually you are doing it in a slightly reduced fashion. But the point is this, is that what concerns me in the argument is I do not believe, and I know that Robert Smith was as forthright as he chose to be in the discussion with us, I don't believe that the British Boxing Board of Control, I don't believe the idea that a day before the public domain becomes aware via a newspaper that they were going to decide on that day before that they were going to stop this fight.
I agree.
So I do believe Conor Benn's got an argument there.
Yeah.
But I also believe that there was a lot of undue pressure being put on the British Boxing Board of Control by maybe the promoters of the fight, the fighter himself, the fighter's legal representation, to take a view on whether this fight should go on. I think it's a bloody mess.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately this nonsense, and I'm very sad to see it, that Conor Benn is going to challenge the British Boxing Board of Control, because what Conor Benn should be doing is going into a hearing, putting forward all the evidence as to his absolute innocence to the British Boxing Board of Control, dealing with the outcome as a result of it.
Sure.
If the outcome is an adverse finding in terms of banning, because he can't prove his innocence on the strict liability side of things, and you understand what strict liability means, don't you?
I totally understand.
It means what's in your body, you've got to explain.
You're accountable for. Yeah, I totally get it. I understand.
So then if the British Boxing Board of Control still didn't come down in his favour, then he should be taking it to the Court of Arbitration of Sport and doing it the proper way, rather than doing it through a mechanism of hyperbole, victims complex, and subterfuge, because it's not difficult to prove your innocence or to put yourself in a position where you've been unfairly treated. And I don't know, as a fighter, and only you can speak to this, and you've not been on the side of disciplinary, I suspect, in your career. Is there anything about the British Boxing Board of Control's behaviour, Robert Smith's outlook, the general disposition and demeanour towards Conor Benn, that would give Conor Benn cause to believe that he's not going to get a fair hearing, that he's not going to be treated fairly, that there's unconscious bias, to want to use an expression, not about his colour, but I'm talking about the fact that ultimately he's already guilty by association. Do you have any belief that any of that exists in this situation?
No, I don't.
So why wouldn't he sit in front of the British Boxing Board of Control and try and prove his innocence? Why would he go round the houses, throw as much shit at the Boxing Board of Control as he possibly can, allude to the fact that there's collusion and bias towards him, go to WBC, hire the biggest lawyers in the country to get him off an anti-doping charge, to find out that ultimately he could have a fair hearing with the British Boxing Board of Control?
Listen, that's the $1 million question. That's what we can't understand, and that's what's making this such a mess. You know, that's why this water is so murky, because you go, this is not really complicated. You know, like Conor Benn hasn't had really any contact with the British Boxing Board of Control. I believe
tough to do one.
I believe he has now had contact again. Now he's looking at suing the British Boxing Board of Control. But the bottom, you know, just prove your innocence. Go there and prove your innocence. They've gone about it with going to the WBC, which I don't see the point in that anyway, because he wants to get reinstalled. I do see the point. He wants to get reinstalled into the rankings so he can box elsewhere in the world.
He creates downward pressure,
but I think it's quite simple. If you're innocent,
prove it.
Go to the British Boxing Board of Control and prove it. Why are you saying, no, I'm not going to prove my innocence? The reason I'm not proving my innocence is because I've been mistreated by the British Boxing Board of Control. You know, they took so long to decide what they was going to do with this fight. Well, just prove your innocence.
But it's ironic if you send,
prove your innocence.
If Robert Smith's to be believed, and all of this will find its way into the because sunlight's the best disinfectant, isn't it? Right. If Robert Smith's to be believed, the moment they found out about the drug test, they got a letter from Conor Benn's lawyers. So, Conor, you know the answer as to the reasons why they couldn't adjudicate anything, because you shoved a cease and desist on them, right? So, ultimately, whilst that shouldn't be acceptable, the British Boxing Board of Control should have been saying, shove your lawyer's letter up your arse. Getting yourself in front of us, or you've got a problem.
Sure, the British Boxing Board of Control did set a hearing with Conor Benn, which he pulled out of with, like, I don't know, the 24 hours before he had that hearing. I can't remember what the date was.
That was right at the back end of September, wasn't it?
But they set the hearing. He said, right, come and prove your innocence, or come and give your explanation.
But that was already 2 months after the first test.
But I'm saying, come and give your explanation.
We're still talking about...
They said, basically, up yours, and we're not coming. So, but if you're innocent, Simon, go and prove it, so you can kick on with your career. Like you said, like Conor Benn was becoming the nation's sweetheart. Everyone loved him. Everyone loved what his dad done. He was a national hero. He still is. Everyone loves that. You know, that whole Benn story. You know, trying to fill his dad's footsteps, fill his dad's shoes. Sorry, prove your innocence, man.
Spence, I suppose, without putting ourselves in a compromised position, if people are running around suing one another, you don't need to put yourself in a way of opinion out there that ultimately jeopardises either a broadcaster or ourselves. Do you think, I'll think about how I'm going to phrase this question, knowing the legal ramifications of it, having been the person that sues people and being sued myself. Let me phrase it in such a way. Do you think Conor Benn will prove his innocence?
I think Conor Benn has got a very difficult task on his hands, proving his innocence, with what's gone on so far, and with what's been presented, and with what his team have been saying about, you know, proving his innocence, etc. I think that he's got a very difficult task. Let me just say that.
I agree.
I think he's got a very difficult task.
I think he's got a very if the burden of obligation upon him, he's already proved his innocence to the WBC, right? So he's already proved that. They're satisfied with that. If the burden of proof from the British Boxing Board of Control is you have to account and provide irrefutable evidence as to how this stuff has manifested itself in your system, given there's no doubt that the VADA tests have been conducted properly, I think he's in the same place that you allude to, which I think he's got difficulty.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. And if the British Boxing Board Control hold the line and hold their attitude of you have to prove to us the unadulterated food chain, where you got these eggs from, where they were bought from, who supplied them, and an absolute unequivocal understanding that these eggs were contaminated with this. There's your smoking gun, point at it, and if your smoking gun points back, then you've now proved yourself innocent. If you can't find that smoking gun, that's a difficulty that I think he has.
I think that's the trail, Simon, that you've just said there. You know, I mean,
and I don't want to see. I don't like all this nonsense, Spence, about suing the British Boxing Board of Control. I sincerely hope, and I imagine they will. Yeah. If they don't, they need to get their asses in gear and get their act together. Yeah. I'm assuming they've got professional liability insurance, which means that if there's a case brought against them, they've got insurance to be able to kick their lawyers in. Sure. So someone waving a big stick at them saying we're going to whack you with £3.5 million unless you fall in line shouldn't faze the British Boxing Board of Control if they've done their job properly and made sure that their organisation is fit for purpose.
Well, we need the board to take a stance on this. So we need the answers. You know, you can't
They've taken a stance.
Yeah.
The stance is, read the press release. We note the observations of the WBC. Yeah. Our position is very clear. Strict liability. Right. We'd like to see Mr. Benn. We'd like to get this matter closed down. Let's hope that they go down this path. Let's hope that Conor and his team stop banding around threats and look to resolve it in a fashion that gives everybody the opportunity to walk away from this in the best possible condition. Okay, Spence, we're going to move into the subject which is my favourite subject. And I'm so disappointed that I didn't get to go on a plane flight with you.
You was missed.
Saudi Arabia, missed by nobody, I suspect. Okay, let's talk about it. Jake Paul, Tommy Fury. Yeah. Away we go. Off you go. All yours, you tell me.
Well, look, as an event, I think they've done amazing. You know, and the whole spectacle, what they put on out there, the Saudis.
Was it a big crowd?
It was it was a decent crowd. It was
How many do you think were there?
They said there was 8,000 there.
Was there?
So I reckon probably maybe let's say 6.
Interesting demographic, young people.
Yeah, it was a mixture really, more young. Okay. More young. Demographic was, pretty young. And it was a lot of locals. Not many people had come in for it, yeah. And I think that's, that's something that the Saudis have still got to deal with. Okay. Changing certain rules they've got out there. But, I think it was fantastic what they put on. They had stuff going on outside of the arena that they had built, like virtual boxing, punch bags up, different things. It was really good. It was really good. There was a real buzz. It was like carnival sort of atmosphere. Things have moved on a lot, have evolved a lot.
I thought the press conference was a little bit flaky.
Yeah, the press
conference. It didn't look very polished and it didn't look very smart. Well, and it didn't look like the backdrop was well set up. Now, maybe I'm just being a bit anal about it. No, it looks a bit like level.
Yeah, it was like there was no one really took a stance in the press conference. That was the problem. You had Derek Chisora as the promoter out there, and he's not really the greatest.
The fake shake.
He's not really the greatest talker. So the press conference was what it was. You know what I mean? It was what I expected.
I couldn't see where Derek's head finished and his ankle stopped with it so far up Prince Khalid's backside.
That's exactly what it was. I mean, the press conference was what it was. I didn't take anything from the press conference.
John Fury was the star of it.
John Fury was really the star of the week, if I'm totally honest. And I've got to say, he done a great job out there, John Fury.
Interesting events out there. It got a little bit heated towards the end.
We're heated people, Spencer. We love it. We thrive on this. Look at Tommy, who's up, ready to go. We can walk through walls when the Furies get to this point. There is no stopping a Fury. Look, am I right? I can go. Me boys can go. We're ready.
Listen, John. Listen, John, speaking to Tommy earlier in the week, he was full of confidence and he said to me, Spence, listen, you know me, I'm a boxer, he's a YouTuber. Do you really believe this will go past 4 rounds? The confidence was there. And did you see anything in the body language up there today with a pair of them? Because Jake seemed quite quiet.
Jake was quiet because he had no other choice than to be quiet. Tommy was up for it. If he'd have flinched wrong, Tommy, they got at him there and then. I said, rein him back, son. Wait for Sunday night. I've looked in that kid's eyes. That kid don't want it. Don't put the kettle on because you'll miss it.
As a sales pitch, John Fury was brilliant. Like Tyson was out there as well. You had Devin Haney, Mike Tyson, like Ronaldo. Everyone was there. So as a spectacle, it was incredible. And as a sales pitch from the guys, I think they've done amazing. I think boxing can take a lot from what they have done.
Do we know the pay-per-view numbers on it yet?
I
I
don't know what the numbers were, but I was speaking to Liam Fisher earlier on, and he said the numbers that we got, head of talkSPORT, numbers that we got, he said were insane. He said they were amazing. You know, all the stuff that we had done on YouTube and whatnot was hitting massive numbers. TikTok, you know, it's that's the generation that we live in now.
Before we get into the fight, I think people have got to accept this. I mean, people like me, I'm not trying to be dinosaurs. They I looked at the fight, and we'll talk about the quality of the fight in a second. But the one thing that boxing's got to do, whether it likes it or loathes it, it's got to look at it and go, right, those kids just got paid £3 million each, plus pay-per-view money, right? We got to do something digitally. We got to do something better. We've got to make sure that fighters are better monetized, fighters are better promoted, fighters are better presented to the world in a better way. And the promoters have got to look at this rather than piss all over it and say it's a YouTuber that's not worth his salt. They've got to look at it and go, hang on a second here, there's something in this. We've got to utilize this for the umbrella, which is boxing.
Absolutely. They've got to learn from it, Simon. They really have. And that's what I say. When I was out there, I was like, do you know what? These kids have put on
He's a kingmaker. Jake Paul is a kingmaker.
He's a kingmaker.
I mean, whether I think he looks like a cross between Catweasel and Aquaman is irrelevant. He's a smart cookie.
He is.
And he is a kingmaker. Now, let's get into the fight itself, because we have to listen to we have to listen to Tommy Fury talking about what he was going to do. We listened to Jake Paul. Does Radio Raheem talk some rubbish?
Don't forget Radio Raheem. I mean, he's nonsense. He's nonsense. I mean, did you see the bit where he interviewed Logan Paul, and Logan Paul said something, and he thought Logan Paul said to him at the end of the interview, "I love you," and he went, "Yeah, love you too, bro." It's like
sycophantic drivel,
yeah, I know.
Drivel. So anyway, the spectacle itself, the setup, all that around it was impressive, and all the hullabaloo and the brouhaha
everything
with it
was brilliant.
But let's get into the fight now, because that's where people are going to start to go, well, it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it's a duck, it's a croc.
I'm glad you said this, get into the fight, because this is where I stand with this, right? These guys, and I interviewed Tommy Fury straight after the fight.
Past 2.5 years, everybody went against me other than my own family. Tonight, this is for everyone. My dad wouldn't be here without him. He stood by my side all the way through the hardship. And I'm now here, this is his victory. This matters to be a world title. I trained hard for this. I put everything I had into this. And I'm here, and I'm a real fighter.
You had so much on the line because you was considered a real boxer, and had you lost that could have been really damaging to the future of your boxing career.
At the end of the day, we're here, I'm the winner, and we move forward.
Yeah, brilliant performance. Listen, he said there he felt he had a couple of points deducted. He feels that it could have gone the other way. Split decision. He'd like to do it again. Could we see that?
Yeah, 100% at the end of the day. I had as many points took as him. I won this fight fair and square. I had a slip that was counted in the 7th round, I think it was, but the punches were tallying up. It's what you got to score with your eyes, not what you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm saying, would you give him the return if he asked for it?
100%. Listen, it's my first main event. I had the pressure of the world on me tonight, and I came through. I'm only going to grow stronger from this.
Adam Cattrall said he would struggle to win an area title.
Well, maybe he would right now, because it's all about the development of fighters. Fighters have to have that development. He's been dipping his toe in and out of boxing. He's had other stuff going on outside of boxing, with YouTube stuff, influencer stuff, Love Island, etc. So, but what he's done is he's monetized this amazingly because
Jake Paul has.
Absolutely. So you get into Jake Paul and you go, right, Jake Paul, we go back to 2018, first fight that he had with Deji KSI's brother. You go back to, I think that was even in 2019, I'm not sure. But anyway, you go back, which is only three or 4 years. This kid's put his heart and soul into boxing. And I was watching him on Sunday night, and I'm looking at him going, fair play to you, mate, because I know how tough it is in there. I know how hard it is. You're in against a legitimate boxer, albeit a raw one. Yeah. The kid is, but he's got the DNA. He's done it as an amateur. He's done it. He's gone through the protocols. So
he's a Fury in name only.
He's a Fury by name only. Yeah, absolutely, of course. But he's not denying that. He's just worked his way. He's He's what's the word? Like he's sold himself that way. He's built himself up as a big product, you know, as a big selling point, and he's done that really well. Jake Paul equally has done, you know, what he's done. He's come from. We're talking about a kid that's come from nothing, by the way. He had nothing, ended up on Disney Channel, and he's started up a YouTube channel with his brother, and they've done unbelievably well. Yeah. You know, like the kid is a genius. He then decides to take up boxing.
It's the Emperor's New Clothes.
When he'd done it 3 or 4 years.
It is the Emperor's New Clothes, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
As much as we can dress it up in a certain way.
But when listen, 3.5, 4 years ago, whatever it was, he took up boxing, and the kid was very, very.
Right, let's move on from Sunday. Somehow you become Jake Paul's PR manager now.
Let me just get. I'm not, but let me just
get to
where I'm going.
Tell me about the fight, because you were there.
All right, so I respect what he's done within the sport and what was going on there. I thought at this level, I went, it's a good fight. It's great.
So you're following the same trajectory as Derek Chisora?
No, I'm not. I don't listen. I don't work for them. I don't work for them. Don't get paid by them. I'm just looking at them, going, I know where they've come from to get to this point, and I'll go. I want to see other people get in there, right? When he was getting, like, I'm looking at Jake Paul, who's got no boxing background, going, he's taking some shots in there. I went, that takes some bollocks, and that's not easy to do. That's hard, right? And they go, you've got to give the kid credit for sticking in there and doing what he done. And he put up.
But he's got to have some credibility.
He's
got to take some licks, hasn't he?
It's not world class. It's maybe not even area title class. But you've got to respect what they were doing in there. And that's what I do. I take it for what it is. Too many people look at it again. World champions not getting paid for this.
Can you believe? I get all that.
Yeah,
and I respect the acumen of someone that's been able to turn a sow's ear into a silk purse.
Right? Yeah.
It's Emperor's New Clothes. You know, here I am. I'm a fighter. Yeah. You kind of not really.
That's
you can take a few licks, right?
Umbrella,
You can take a few licks, but really that don't make you a fighter, right? But can you believe the preposterous nonsense of people like Mauricio Solomon coming up and putting WBC belts up for grabs?
This is the problem that we've got, right? So the kids
and put them in the rankings next to bit one.
Themselves are like doing that, and I'm a fighter, and I'm going to be. Listen, it's clickbait. It's all about getting the numbers. Like I'm going to beat Canelo, this and that. It's drawing the people in. They've got a younger generation, younger audience, different demographic. I get all that, so I know what they're doing. I know exactly what they're doing. They get in there, and you go, well, they're two very average sort of fighters, and very raw fighters at this stage, but. It was entertainment, man. You know, everyone enjoyed it. It was a great night. The whole event was brilliant.
Well, we can kill it in the cradle, right? No fighting Canelo ever is. None of that old tosh, right? None of that idea that Tommy Fury's on a trajectory now for world titles. None of that, right?
Not even trying to make a case for that. Going absolutely nowhere near that.
Okay, so for the feeble-minded now, we'll get into the rematch position. But the feeble-minded that are calling for a rematch, and something myself and Eddie Hearn will actually agree on, that there's nothing in the ideal behind having a rematch. But what do you think?
What about the rematch?
Yeah, about the rematch.
I was going to go. They're going to.
Well, what do you think there should be a bloody rematch?
Well, yeah, for from their point of views, because they'll make even more money, and ultimately it's prize fighting. It's about money, but then like their audiences that like this. You know, other people can choose to watch it or not watch it.
But let me rephrase let me repackage the question, right? Because we can accept their audience, right? Yeah. And we can accept and value their acumen for getting themselves in a position.
But you're saying, is it worthy
of a rematch? For the boxing world, right? The Mauricio Solomons of the world, right? Yeah. And those guys that are giving it credibility, right? Should we that want boxing to be the very best it can be, right? And look, and when we look at it through every single window, we go, wow, that window was a compelling look. Yeah. What we can look through the window up there, we can look through the window and see, oh, look, there's a big bag of money if you don't do very much besides look good, right? Close the window, right? But should the boxing world that love their boxing, the purists that listen to shows that Adam Cattrall does, or listen to our show and whatever else, should they be sitting there going, well, actually, fair game. They should have a rematch.
They don't want to see that. They won't want to see the rematch. They won't want
to
see the rematch.
And I'm in that camp.
They don't want to see the rematch. But that window that was open, and says, oh, look, there's a big pot of money.
Lessons to be learned.
Yeah, no, but that's Mauricio Solomon putting the WBC. Yeah. And he shouldn't have done that, you know. WBC is a respected. The green and gold belt is the belt that everyone wants to win.
Because if Jake Paul would have won that fight, right, there'd been arguments saying, well, he was 40 in the world, has another couple of fights, could be 20.
Absolutely.
In goes Richard Riakporhe and does him serious damage.
The fault of putting him in the top 40, the winner of getting put into the top 40, I don't know if it was just Jake Paul or the winner, is it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. You know, that's the problem. The WBC have got themselves involved in something they should not have got themselves involved in, right? These two are licensed boxers. All right, fair enough. Jake Paul was trying to get recognised and credibility off the boxing world, and he would have done that if he beat Tommy Fury. They go, well, you know, the kid's working hard, he's at a level, but people have got to understand this is at a level that you said it there, Simon. Would they win an area title?
Did you come back with any deals?
Would they come?
Any little side deals for
yourself?
Me? Yeah, you.
I've got a few. I can't really talk about it on air because they're still in negotiation.
All right. Well, look, we are no doubt going to hear more about Tommy Fury.
I've got no deals with the WBC. Let me just tell you that.
Well, no doubt going to hear from KSI because we heard about his laughter afterwards.
I spoke to him, but for another conversation. Yeah.
Anyway, up and onwards. Yeah. Spence. Okay. One thing I will take away from that Jake Paul Tommy Fury, which gives me some crumb of consolation, is that there was a legitimate, in my view, fight on that card. World Cruiserweight WBC.
Yeah.
Badou Jack comes out, 39 years of age. Yeah, must be people in England looking at that thinking, oh, I fancy some of you.
Licking their lips, my friend, licking their lips. You know, Makabu had been inactive, 3 fights in 3 years.
Got beat by Tony Bellew.
Got beat by Tony Bellew back at Evan Park, when Bellew won the WBC title. Makabu come out there. It was a strange performance from Makabu. Looked a little bit lethargic. Looked like he was walking through treacle a little bit. And Badou Jack, who, like you say, is 39 years of age, becomes the oldest boxer, cruiserweight boxer in history to win the cruiserweight title.
So Richard Riakporhe must be licking his lips.
Oh, mate, Badou Jack just grew in confidence. He went out there, and as the fight was going on, you're thinking, strange performance.
He's a world level fighter now, isn't he?
Yeah, but he is. But what I'm saying is he rolled back the years. He boxed out of his skin, really, to beat Makabu, and he beat him into submission and won with 12th round stoppage. I mean, fair play to him. He did roll back the years. And it was a great fight. It was a great fight. But Richard Riakporhe, Chris Billam-Smith, Lawrence Okoli for the unification. What I'd like to see is actually Lawrence Okoli WBO champion. I'd like to see Riakporhe boxing.
Gotcha. I agree with
you. And then I'd love to see the unification. Because Riakporhe...
And that's what I think was what Ben wants.
Yeah, Riakporhe... kicks Badou Jack's arse right now.
I think so.
Absolutely.
Too. I think so too. And that's what I think is the great outcome of this.
Yeah.
When we're talking about this event, is that Richard Riakporhe gets a shot at WBC, which is Badou Jack, deals with him, and then we've got a Coley, bad blood, British fight, sellable, bankable in this country, payable for both the fighters.
Absolutely.
Okay, up and onward. Right, that's it for episode 15 of Talk Boxing. Don't forget to keep liking the video, subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to look for the Q&A on Sundays. Myself and Spencer. We'll see you next week.